quite hibernate. They have kind of their own version of hibernation, but they don't go completely unconscious and just sit there till spring. But they do go mostly dormant, and then when there's some warm weather, they'll go out on a cleansing flight, which is their bathroom trip. They'll hold it in for months at a time, and then when there's a warm day, they'll go out and fly and relieve themselves and come back, because they won't do that inside the hive. They're very clean creatures. So yeah, they're so fascinating, and there's a lot you can tell about bees and what's going on inside the hive and how well they're doing or not doing by how they do their cleansing flights. If there's a bunch of little specks of bee poop around the entrance of your hive, then chances are they've caught something that involves diarrhea, and you need to address that and do something to help them get back to good health. You definitely don't want to open up your hive in cold weather, because it's very important that they keep that warmth in there. If you need to feed or something like that, then you want to wait for a warm day, 50 or even better, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And I don't have memorized how that translates to Celsius, so convert it yourself. It's easy online. Just go to maybe Google temperature converter or something like that, but about 50 or 55 degrees minimum to open your hive. And I like to wait until, if I'm going to do that, until there's going to be several days in a row that are at least that warm and mild nights, so that they can have a chance to reestablish the internal temperature of the hive for a few days before it starts getting really cold again. So even if it's 60 degrees today, if it's going to be 22 degrees as the high for tomorrow, I probably won't open it today. I want them to have a while to reestablish that, and I'll try to avoid opening it as much as possible during the winter, even during warm periods, because for the most part, they just need to be left alone, unless it's a question between feeding them and having them starve to death. No brainer, but open it as little as humanly possible, especially during the cold months. And so I would say between about mid to late April and could go up to anywhere from beginning of October to mid-November, just depending on how the weather goes and if there's still any flowers around. Our winters are kind of funny here in Colorado. Sometimes they start really early, sometimes they start really late, sometimes it freezes for a week and then it's summer up through Christmas, and then it gets cold back again, and it's just strange weather. Every year is different here, so it would vary by a couple of months probably here in Colorado, but generally about mid-April till when it gets cold. Or I should say when there aren't any more flowers around. And some bees are more cold tolerant than others. There's a native Russian bee that is very cold tolerant. They'll be out collecting pollen and nectar when it's 38 degrees Fahrenheit out. So, that's very close to freezing. What would that be? That'd probably be close to 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, I'm guessing. So they'll fly when it's very, very cold, whereas the Italians and the Carniolans and the others, they have less cold tolerance and they wait till it's warmer. But the Russians are very cold tolerant. So if you live in a cold tolerant area, you might want to look into Russians, or at least some bees that are part Russian. The bees I'm getting, by the way, are bred in kind of an isolated valley in Tennessee, and they are so that you don't have strange strains of bees that you don't know interbreeding with your bees. They're very isolated bee-wise, and several miles away from the nearest other hive, and so they can keep their stock exactly as they want it. And they, instead of breeding out genetic traits, which weakens the bees, they have actually crossed several varieties of bees to put more genetic variety within that colony's genome, or I should say that apiary, because they've got many colonies in their apiary, which is just a word for bee yard, where you keep your hives. And so they've actually bred more genetics into their bees by crossing several of these. And it's just like inbreeding. the more you inbreed your bees and breed them with closely related bees to accentuate a certain trait, the weaker they're going to get. It's like with humans, if you marry your sister, your kids are probably going to be stillborn or have really, really awful birth defects. That's one of several reasons that we have chosen not to encourage that sort of thing, because when you get that inbred, the offspring are not going to either not going to survive at all or not going to survive very long. They're just not going to do well. And that's what we've been doing with animals, with any animal that we breed. We've been inbreeding them so much that they've gotten very weak. So these people I'm getting my bees from are actually reversing that and breeding the bees with a very far away, barely related honeybee. And, they probably all came from the same stock at one point thousands of years ago anyway, so we're just getting them back closer to that. And now with the climate changing, I think it's really advantageous to cross more varieties and get more genetic material, more genetic variety, I should say, in that colony's genome to strengthen them. So they've crossed Italian, Carniolan, Russian, and wild survivor stock, which means that bees that have just been on their own in the wild for a number of years. Most bees that are in the wild today have escaped from someone's hive rather than being truly wild. In fact, in America, all of our honeybees are imported. We don't have a Native American honeybee. We have other kinds of bees like the bumblebee and the sweat bee and the carpenter bee, which annoys some people, but I think they have a purpose too. And the